Hi, Geeky American Otaku here. This is my first video of 2022. I've been kind of dealing with some mental health issues off and on the last couple months, but I'm starting to feel a little better now. So I decided to make a quick video. This is actually going to be a spin-off of my 15-minute game show review series. I'll be doing another one of those soon, but right now this is the first video of my new series called The Top 10. Okay, the subject of this edition of the Top 10, and yes, I stole that from David Letterman. I apologize. Anyway, the subject here is the top 10 game shows that need to be aired on Buzzr. While Buzzr has been airing game shows that aren't owned by Fremantle, such as Concentration, Whew, and now the Newlywed Game, there are quite a few other shows that fall into the category. So I decided to make a list of the top 10 game shows I'd like to see on Buzzr sometime in the future. I also added how likely it'll be that Buzzr will ever air them. With that in mind, here's the list. Number 10, Crosswits. A show that had two different runs. First in the 1970s with veteran game show announcer Jack Clark, and then in the 1980s with David Sparks. The show is an interesting take on solving crossword puzzles, and although the 80s version has been seen off and on in reruns since at least the mid-90s, the 70s version looks to be far superior. Chances of it coming to Buzzr, 45 to 55%. Both versions of the show are intact, but the original version with Jack Clark has not been seen on TV since it ended in 1980. The rights for the 70s version are currently owned by Ralph Edwards Productions, so it's possible that Fremantle could work out a deal with them to air the original series. I'm not sure who owns the 80s version. GSN, however, did air a few episodes in 2014, so it might be owned by Sony. So that version might be more difficult to come by. But Buzzr did get the rights to the Newlywed Game, so we'll see. Number 9, Catchphrase. Hosted by Art James, Catchphrase is a show that unfortunately didn't get much love in America. But the show was eventually exported overseas and became very successful, especially in the UK, where it ran originally from 1986 to 2004, and even saw a revival in 2013, and that version is still on the air today. It also saw success down under in Australia, running from 1997 to 2003. Chances of it coming to Buzzr, 40 to 50%. The US version of the show is currently owned by Warner Brothers, so Fremantle would probably have to pay them a good-sized fee to air it on Buzzr. But unless Warner Brothers puts it on HBO Max, which is unlikely, Buzzr would probably be the best bet for it to be available to a large audience. My hope is that it would attract enough of an audience that it could get another chance at a remake here in the States. They actually tried to remake it back in 2008, I believe, with Todd Newton as host, and unfortunately it didn't sell. But the pilot is up on YouTube if you ever want to look for it. Wink Martindale put it up. Number 8, Battlestars. One of the more interesting game shows from the early 80s. It was created by Meryl Heater, who created the original Hollywood Squares, and as such, it's sometimes called the Hollywood Triangles. It was also one of Alex Trebek's earlier series that marked his return to NBC after the network axed the original High Rollers for David Letterman's ill-fated morning show in 1980. Now, there were actually two runs of the show. The original ran from October of 1981 to April of 1982, and saw a brief reboot in the middle of 1983 as the new Battlestars. Chances of it coming to Buzzr, 25 to 30%. Although both runs are intact, the show is owned by MGM, who acquired the rights to the Meryl Heater Bob Quigley library. And with MGM being acquired by Amazon, it's more likely that reruns of Battlestars and the other HQ shows would end up on Prime Video instead. And in any case, Buzzr has 3 of Alex's non-Jeopardy shows on there already. Of course, that's Classic Concentration, Double Dare 76, and the 1990-91 version of To Tell the Truth. Number 7, Bumper Stumpers. For those who don't remember this show, Bumper Stumpers was created by game show legend Wink Martindale and was actually filmed by Canadian TV network Global and hosted by Quebec native Al Dubois, although it did air on the USA Network here in the States and was rerun by GSN in the 90s. The idea of the game was to decipher word puzzles presented as vanity license plates, which admittedly is a pretty cool idea. Chances of it coming to Buzzr, 50-50. The reason I put the chances that high is because the US rights are owned by Sony, but as we all know, Buzzr began airing reruns of the Newlywed Game from 1997 just a couple months ago. So there's always the possibility that Buzzr could finagle the rights to it. Number 6, Funhouse and College Madhouse. One of my favorite game shows growing up as a kid, Funhouse was hosted by J.D. Roth, who is now a prominent TV producer and featured teams of kids taking part in messy stunts and races for a chance to run through the aforementioned Funhouse to win all kinds of cash and prizes. There was also an adult version which featured college students, hosted by a then-unknown Greg Kinnear, although that version was a weekly series during the 1989-90 season. The chances of it coming to Buzzr? 20 to 30%. Just like Catchphrase, both shows are owned by Warner Brothers. So, that means that Fremantle would have to pay a hefty fee to air it on Buzzr. And there aren't that many kids' game shows on Buzzr to begin with, if any, and the FCC's EI rules may not allow them to. So the best chance to seeing Funhouse or College Madhouse on TV again would be HBO Max. So don't hold your breath. We need to repeal the EI rules. Number 5, Wipeout. 20 years before ABC launched a different show with the same name, Press Your Luck host Peter Tomarken hosted and created this short-lived but fun syndicated quizzer for the 1988-89 season. Despite its short run, it did find new life in reruns on USA for 3 years, and even greater success in Europe, spawning versions in the Netherlands, the UK, and Spain, where a new version debuted in that country just last year. Chances of it coming to Buzzr? 30 to 40%. The rights to the US version of Wipeout are owned by CBS. Plus, there is the issue of the more well-known stunt game show, which was brought back on TBS just last year. That version is owned by Endemol Shine, and they probably want to avoid any confusion between the two shows, so they may be preventing CBS from distributing the 80s version. I'm not sure. And it's too bad. Wipeout 88 was a fun show, and it showed that Peter Tomarken was a great host, with or without the whammy. Number 4, Shop Till You Drop. One of the best cable game shows to premiere in the 90s, and the one with staying power, Shop Till You Drop made up a 1-hour block of Lifetime's nightly lineup being paired with Supermarket Sweep from 1991 to 95, and then again on the PAX network known as ION from 2000 to 2003. Shop Till You Drop featured contestants, usually couples, performing stunts and answering questions before they got to run around the mall to buy as much stuff as possible to win a fabulous vacation. It was hosted masterfully by one of the more better and underrated game show hosts in Pat Finn. It was a funny and exciting show at the same time. Chances of it coming to Buzzr? 50-50. The show was actually produced by Stone Stanley Productions, and they retained ownership until the company dissolved a few years ago, so it's not known who owns it now. But if Buzzr could get the rights to it, I could see them pairing it with Supermarket Sweep in the same hour like Lifetime and PAX did back in the day. Number 3, Hollywood Squares. One of TV's longest-running game shows, there's not much that needs to be said about it. It's Shtick-Tac-Toe. It's also long overdue for another reboot, but I'll save that for another video. Now, I should point out that the John Davidson version would be the one that I'd like to see the most again because it was the earliest version I remember. The Tom Bergeron version is out of the question since it's owned by CBS, and sadly, most of Peter Marshall's version is gone thanks to NBC's practices regarding videotape at the time. Although GSN did air reruns of 130 episodes of the original series back in the 2000s. Chances of it coming to Buzzr? 40 to 45%, mainly because the show is owned by MGM, and as mentioned earlier, Amazon is buying them, so it's more likely the show would end up on Prime if the sale goes through. However, Buzzr has been airing reruns of the match game Hollywood Squares Hours since 2019, and they had to work out a deal with MGM to air the series, although Fremantle is half owner of the other show. But it's not impossible that MGM will play nice and let Buzzr air more squares on the network. Number 2, High Rollers. A show not seen since it left the USA Network in 1991, High Rollers brought the high-stakes Vegas dice game of craps to TV. And although it was best known for being Alex Trebek's big break in the 70s, that version is not going to air on TV ever again, sadly, since most of the episodes of that version are gone. Thankfully, the show got another life in 1987 with Wink Martindale as the host, and despite only running for 1 year, it saw a new life on USA, and a lot of people still remember it. And since that version is still intact, it'd be the one that would probably end up on TV again. Chances of it coming to Buzzr? 40 to 45%. Again, MGM's ownership strikes again. But since Fremantle did get the match game Hollywood Squares Hour on Buzzr, they could ask MGM to let them have High Rollers too. In fact, Wink Martindale could also play a part in helping get the show back on TV. He did start a campaign to get Hugh on Buzzr, so he could try again here. And besides of all the game shows that Wink hosted, this is probably the only one I can see ending up on there. Tic-Tac-Toe and Headline Chasers are owned by Sony. Most of Gambit is probably gone. Debt is owned by Disney, and Trivial Pursuit is owned by Hasbro. Which brings me to number 1, Scrabble. You all knew this would be my top choice. Of all the game shows based on board games, Scrabble was by far the most successful, enjoying a 6-year run from 1984 to 90 on NBC, and even a 6-month revival in 1993. Scrabble also got a second life in reruns on USA from 1991 until that network stopped airing game shows in 1995. And with 1,335 episodes produced between the two versions, it could be on Buzzr's lineup forever, although I'm hoping it'll get another revival someday. And of all the game shows that were hosted by Chuck Woolery, this was, in my opinion, the best one he did. The chances of it coming to Buzzr? 50 to 60%. Scrabble, like another hit NBC game show of the 80s, Sale of the Century, was produced by Reg Grundy Productions, which is now part of Fremantle, and Sale airs on Buzzr almost every day. However, the Scrabble name is owned by Hasbro, so that would be up to them and their media division, Allspark. But since Fremantle is the part owner of the show, they do have some leverage, so of all the shows I'd like to see on Buzzr, this one is probably the most likely. Unless Hasbro starts their own streaming service with all their shows, with reruns of G.I. Joe and My Little Pony, that'd be pretty cool. But in any case, Buzzr would be the best chance to see Scrabble on TV again. And that's my list of my top 10 game shows that need to be aired on Buzzr. If you can think of any other game shows you want to see them get the rights to, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm the Geeky American Otaku. And in light of the tragedy going on in Ukraine, I'm going to close with a message of peace from Alex Trebek from one of his last episodes of Jeopardy!
We're trying to build a gentler, kinder society, and if we all pitch in just a little bit, we're going to get there.
Deep hurting.